Okay, welcome back. And for those of you that are just joining, welcome. So, here in the second session, we are going to be kind of talking about primarily the layer settings and the index. Um, we kind of left a whole session just for these two buttons because they're pretty involved, uh, to say the least. Um, yeah, there's a lot going on with these, and there's a couple areas. Yeah, pay attention, be careful, and like I said in the first one, if something does happen and you make a change and it's not needed or not liked, let us know and we can help you get things reverted back. But first off, let's go to the layer settings here. So mine's kind of a pink button with the pages on it. Some people may have kind of a little button with three L's on it. Same button. And if you don't have a button for it at all, um, I believe it's setup and layer settings. Any of those will work. But we'll just click this. And I'm going to open up my layer settings. I will actually stretch this out, make it a little easier to see. So right here, we have our layer settings. And as you see down the left-hand side, all of our layers. And they are listed there. The layer order does matter. So it's kind of, I guess you would say the layer settings are in opposite order as the map. So whereas our first layer is photography, and then elevation, and then zones, sections, county boundary. Yeah, as we move down, that's actually the bottom of the map. So it would almost be like photography is the first layer put down, then elevation on top of that, then zones, sections. So where that comes into play is that, for one, photography should always be at the top because that will make sure that all of your layers and any data, addresses, center lines, parcels, utility lines, that will make sure that they're all sitting on top of the photography and that you can see them. Um, so I would venture to say that like for like a dispatch, most likely addresses will be pretty far down, if not all the way at the bottom, which will make your addresses on top of everything out on the map. So just a kind of a quick example of this, um, like where we see we have photography all the way at the top. If I was to take it and this little kind of box down the left-hand side, if I left click and hold, you can see as this blue line is where I'm going to drop it. If I drop it below addresses, so now photography is down here. If I close, everything looks the same. However, if I zoom in, photography is going to kick on and we can't see anything. If I use my scroll wheel to kind of zoom slightly or right click and hold and pan, we can see that everything's there. But the photography is drawing on top of it. So this is where that kind of comes into play. So for that reason, yeah, photography, left click and hold, pull that back to the top. Now everything is on top of the photography. So that's why I say layer order does matter. Um, if you kind of play around with the layer settings and everything, if you ever have a situation where it looks on the map like one layer is on top of another layer and you need that reversed, just in the layer settings, if, for example, roads were on top of highways and you wanted highways on top of roads, like you would have it set like this. But if you wanted the roads on top of the highways, you would just reverse the order. And that would switch them on the map. And again, any questions on anything, let me know. So yeah, that layer order, kind of everything down the left-hand side, all of your layers, and you will notice that when we get into it, in the index is going to have it's going to mimic the layer settings. It's going to be in the exact same order. So first 3 columns that we have on, off, and auto. The first 2, on and off, pretty easy. On you can see it, off you can't. And auto, though, is going to be just a little bit different. And I will kind of explain that with the photography because it is already set to auto. If I left click here, we get a menu over on the right hand side. And we can see on, off, auto, and it's set to auto. What we want to pay attention to is right here where it says max range. The max range on this map currently is set to 1 mile. What that means is from top to bottom, the map is constantly measuring this distance against the aerial photography or against the background. So with this particular layer being set to 1 mile, what that means is that anytime this distance is 1 mile or less, this layer turns on. Anytime this distance top to bottom on the map is greater than 1 mile, it turns off. So if I close the layer settings again, like if I can hit max view, this distance is now greater than 1 mile, so the photography turned off. And this can be done with any of the layers. And like as you see, we don't have addresses or anything on. If I start zooming in using the scroll wheel, once we hit the spots where they are set to auto, we'll see things kind of start to turn on. And once we get in close enough, there's the photography, and we also have the addresses popping up. So you can kind of have different things pop on at different levels so that it keeps it from, like if we were at max view and we just had everything turned on, you wouldn't be able to see anything. I know a lot of people will have, like at max view, if it's the full county, they may just have the county boundary, roads and highways, and that's it. Maybe town boundaries. And it keeps the map kind of clean and you can see where things are. Then as you zoom in, whether it's using the plus or left click and hold to drag a window, as you zoom in, you can have things turn on then. And it doesn't make everything, look kind of cluttered, and you can actually see what you're looking at. So kind of having a lot of the items set to on is not always the best, but like roads, highways, county boundary set to on, not a problem. And then the one that I know the other service guys would probably agree that we do get calls on periodically about slow maps, and many times it's because the aerial photography has been set to on. Whereas like if I go to max view and just keep zooming out to where I can see the whole county, if I was to turn the photography to on, we have to wait for each aerial photography tile to draw. This one's actually drawing relatively quickly. But any time that we moved, you would have to wait every time for it to redraw all that. If we zoomed in, we have to wait for it to draw. And if this is, on some machines, that may go really slow. according to, according to the computer and maybe the size of the tiles in the aerial photography, that could go really slow. If it is just kind of tile, 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 and it's going to take forever, just hold down escape, and that will kind of kill that process of drawing to let you get into the layer settings to switch that back to auto. And you can stop that. But yeah, I would there may be, there may be a time or two that you want to or need to switch your photography to on. There are times, especially like if you may be on a call with me, getting some help for printing. There are times that, when doing certain prints, we may need to switch the photography temporarily to on. But, for the most part, photography will either be off or set to auto. And again, though that can be set for any of these layers. Yeah, I just like as you see, a lot of my layers are just off. I just turn them on as needed. I always try to keep the map as simple as possible. Just so that you see what you need to look at. What's going to help you do your job. Yeah, anything else can, it can just be too much to look at, and it kind of makes things confusing. So next over the next three, we have our line, text, and fill. And this is where you can customize the map to look the way that you need it to look, to make it work for you. First column is like line. So I'll just pick, like we can slide this to the side. So, a lot of the lines that we see out there on the map currently, like the black parcel lines. So what we'll do here is I'll just go to parcels and then the line column and just left click. So down the left-hand side or right-hand side, excuse me, we have line color, line width, and line style. And this is, again, this is where you make the map look the way that you need it to look. Line color, if you didn't want the parcels to be these black lines, but you wanted them to be green, we could just left click green, and you're like in 1 pixel wide, that thin line, we don't want that. We want it to be 3 pixels wide. So now it'll be green and 3 pixels. So if we see out here, we have thin black lines. If we close, now they're thick and green. And that may work well for you. Again, completely personal preference. But yeah, there could be times, again, like I mentioned with printing, there could be times that we may need to make some changes like that to get a print to come out correctly. But a lot of times, like with parcels and a lot of things, yeah, you may never touch that if it's not needed. And then in some cases, I know that like with dispatches, for example, is that they may have a set way they want the map to look, and they just prefer you not to touch those. So if that's the case, maybe don't mess with those. But yeah, turning things on and off to see things isn't going to really affect anything like that. But yeah, changing colors and line width and style and all that, that can change things around a little bit. And if something happens and you need help getting it reverted back, let us know. But back in here, and then the next one though was line style at the bottom. I will actually set this back to black and 1 pixel so that it was the way it was. Now down below, for the line style, because as you see, we can have those lines. Default is just a solid line, but we can have dash, dotted, ones that I guess look like Morse code. But the one at the bottom with the arrows, primarily used with utilities. So if I come down to like where it says sanitary layers, and I'll turn on the sanitary mains and close. If I zoom in, we can see kind of all of the sewer lines, and we can see the arrows on those lines, and that is indicating direction of flow. So, whenever these were drawn in, this, that line style was set for with the arrows to show directionals, and then they were drawn in that direction. But yeah, that is just kind of one of the other options. Again, yeah, directionals primarily used with utilities, but they are available. And then the other option kind of within here, as we see, is kind of the blue, I guess, say hyperlinks along the edge next to each one, line color, line width, line style. That is for classifying layers, or like by colors or by size or type. With the utilities right now, this, just as an example, this sanitary layer, this one is color coded according to the size of the main. So if there is no size put out on the map, it's blue. But if it's a 4-inch line, it's kind of this pinkish color. If it's a 6-inch line, it's purple. To set any of those up, like we could just come to line width, classify. 99 times out of 100, it's going to be unique values. And we just hit next. Then it asks you, well, what field do you want to classify by? And it gives you all of the field options. And again, we could just pick main size or main material, but I'll just do size. And then next. So now here are our sizes, 2, 4, 6, and 8. And it's just defaulted to 1 pixel, 2 pixel, 3 pixel, 4 pixel. If you want to adjust that, just left click, and you can click on any of those and choose different width. Again, totally customizable. And if I'm going to unclassify that, put it back the way it was. But yeah, like right here with the classified sanitary mains, if the 6-inch being purple, if you didn't like that and you wanted it, to be a different color, just click here and say, oh, 6-inch, I want that to be dark green. And now it's dark green. If we close, those are all dark green now. So again, kind of change those around as needed, whatever's going to work best for you, whatever's going to help you. And I'll put it back the way it was. So next over, we have the text column. And, I may come to like addresses for that. With the text, like if I slide this to the side again, we can see all of the house symbols, and then just above them, like this says 670, this says 324, 360. The text color is indicated here. So like we have kind of this grayish color, and that's what color all of the labels are. Just below, we can, make it, whether it's bold, italics, underline, the shadow around it can make it stand out pretty well. So like right now, it's like a light bluish color, maybe that isn't standing out, or, if we turned off the shadow and just had this light blue color, so you can't hardly see it because it's actually blending in with the house. So if we come back in and say maybe, oh, we'll make it white and bold. See, now you can see a white label, but it's really hard to see. So we'll add that black shadow around it. And that makes them stand out pretty well. So it's just, again, just different ways to customize it to make it, work best for you. And along with the kind of the label here, like where this says, again, 670, 324, if you need more information, that is controlled below in the layer format, or the label format, excuse me. So if I click here, currently this is labeling by the house field. If I wanted more information, I could just hit add field. So here's all of the fields within that address layer. So right now we have house. And if we also wanted, community or the street name, what we could do here is, let's just start this one over. I'll just delete. So now we don't even have a label. Add field, we want the street name. We also want the directional. Let's do the house number. So now it's going to kind of cram them together. So I'll come in here and add a space in between those brackets. Yeah. So now, as you see, it's Strawberry Road East 324, which makes no sense. So that's where, the order that you put those in also plays a role. So what we would do here is again come back. We might remove this one. Like I can just cut, come back to the beginning, paste, add that space back. Take this one, cut, and paste. So now it's house, direction, street. Close. That's 324 East Strawberry Road. So the order that you put those in also plays a role. And you can do this with other layers, in a lot of cases, we know that this is Strawberry Road because the road says it there. So they may, just to keep the map looking more simple, just with the house numbers, because it's Strawberry Road. So you may take this off, which may be why they didn't have the full address on there. But yeah, some places do put the full address with community. You could do the same thing with parcels. If we came up to parcels and went to text, like right now, it's just set for parcel and split. And as we see here, we don't see anything out there currently because the next option that I was going to talk about with these labels, it's a different portion, but it goes kind of hand in hand with the labels or with this text column, is all the way over here in the auto label column. So if I click here in the auto label column, I can see that the labels are turned off. So if I set those to auto, they're set at auto 1 mile and they're set for 14 pixels. Then if I come back to the text, I can see that right now it's set for the parcel number and the split number. And it should be an orange label that's bold with a black shadow around it. So if I close, there's my parcel numbers. And that's just the parcel number. Like they did not put the full 18 digit. But if they did want the full 18 digit, then yeah, you would just adjust it right here. Or maybe they just wanted, because we could hit add field. It's possible that they also, they just wanted the parcel and split number, but also the owner name. So we'll add that, but they don't want that on the same line. So I'll just hit enter and move it below. So now when we close, now it has the owner name below the parcel number. So again, the labeling and all of that is completely customizable. You can make it look the way it's going to work best for you. And here with parcels, I'll turn off the labels. We'll come back to addresses. Whereas we go back to auto label here for the addresses. The other thing to keep in mind here is this pixel, like label height. So it's set to 12, which is, it looks pretty good here. But if we went to like 16 pixels, and I type 12 in again, let's see if I hit my num lock so that I can type. Now if we close, those labels are bigger. So within the auto label for the like label height, changing the pixel, bigger number, bigger label. And again, just whatever works for you. I'll put that back to 12 the way they had it. And again, but right below that is, for the point, like for this address point, the point is right in the middle of the symbol. They will have the label, and you can set whether the label is above the point, right through the middle of it, or below. And again, that's just to kind of help you set things up. Let's see. And Leslie, I think there may have been a question. Is this one to chime in now, or did we need to save it to the end?
Just a couple questions.
Sure.
I think we can, at least one of them will pertain to the layer settings.
Okay.
Categorizing them. You've
Okay.
got several folders, it looks like. How do you do that, and what would you advise?
Okay, that's actually my next topic. That's right where I was heading.
Perfect.
Right after the auto labels and all that. Well, the one last thing that I will talk about, and then I will cover um, the categorization of layers, uh, is this fill column. And this is to kind of any of like the symbols or areas that are out on the map. We can adjust this fill column to change, like with the addresses here, we could go to the fill, and right now they're set to fill with the same color as the line color. So we can so everything looks the same. If we changed it to white and then closed, now all the symbols, they still have that same kind of bluish color. You may or may not be able to see that well around the outside, but the fill in the inside of it is white. And you can also just hit none, which would turn that. Now it's just the outline of that house, or kind of the symbol with no fill. But I will put that back to the way it was. And then with parcels, for example, with the fill, this is a good way to kind of check areas. Like we have the black lines for parcels, but now with the fill, I have it set to orange, and this hopefully doesn't blind us. This is going to be really bright probably. Yeah. And as we zoom out, this turned on the fill for parcels. And this is kind of a good QC check, actually, for those doing parcels, because I can see right now where I was zoomed in, this didn't fill in. So that means there's a missing parcel there. And it's just kind of just a simple check. But you can also, whereas we mentioned classifying previously, I could classify that fill color on parcels by any of the fields, and I may do section. So next, so this is going to assign all of the sections a different color. So if I close and we start zooming out, it's going to kind of look like a quilt. But this is, again, a good check because with all of the sections and the grids, if we had one parcel that was in the middle of one of these that's a different color, that could be an indicator of a bad parcel number, and that could make it stand out. And it's just, kind of an easy visual. And right there, that pointed that one out. We have a missing parcel right here. So again, this is just a simple way to kind of find a couple little things that need looked at or checked on. And I will turn that back off to make the map look normal again. And in max view. Okay, so now, as Leslie mentioned the categories and how to do that. So with our layers down the left-hand side, we have, some that are, we can see the layers here and others that are just next to like a plus or a minus. Those, the plus and the minus, those are the categories. And this is a way to, I guess you'd say, kind of condense and kind of keep the layer settings clean so that it's kind of makes them easier to get around and everything. So if we're working with base layers, hit the plus. This is all of the layers that are within those base layers. The way to do that is, and let me pull a couple layers. Let's see if it'll let me. Like there. I just pulled a couple layers. I basically just left clicked and pulled them below that category, but above the gas layers category. So now if I close the base layers, you can see they're not in a category anymore. If, highways, addresses, and roads, I wanted those to be in their own category. Like, I don't want those to be in map layers. Or base layers. I want them to be, we'll just say, an address category. What I would do is where the addresses are, right click, then over to the right, categorize this layer. It says, what do I want the category to be called? We'll just do addresses layers. So now we have our category, and if I hit the plus, it shows that we have addresses in that category. If I wanted roads and highways to be in there with it, I would just left click and hold and drag them into that category. You kind of see the little line saying that this is in that category, but we'll just pull the blue line into there. That is now in the category. And then we could grab highways, pull that into that category, and then close. So again, this is just a really good way to kind of group things together, keep it clean. You can turn things, like you say, on and off, auto. You also have, with the category name, the option to turn on and off the entire category all at once. And that, again, can come in handy. Like I say, I do that with utilities a lot, to where, I may, like if I turn those on, if I want to, see water layers, that turned on everything in this water category. So now I can just close, and I'm looking at a water map. This has everything with the water system. But then I'm like, well, I don't necessarily need water now. I want to look at the sanitary lines. Close the water category, turn on sanitary, and now I've got all of that. So it's basically kind of a quick, easy way to completely swap your map around. And yeah, and just make it look, it's almost like, with this, in this case, I have a sanitary layer map. Now it's a water map. Now it's an electric map. And, you know, primarily showing that information. And then again, with the layer settings, let me know if you have any questions and contact us at any time with questions on anything I went over. Real quick here, jump over to the layer settings. Like I mentioned before, layer settings, they're all listed down the left-hand side exactly the same as the layer settings, the index is. And as you see, like addresses layers, our category is there now because we added it in the layer settings. But anything that we click on, any of these layers listed down the left-hand side, any of the layers that we click on, it pulls up all of the information that is within that layer down the side. And any of the information on any of the layers is completely searchable. So for example, like on this sanitary layer, I could hit search and it pulls up a blank form. So if I wanted main size, I could hit 4-inch, search, and it found 291 features. And as you see, we scan up and down, and I usually tell people to scan up and down just to double check it. Because if, for example, there was a 14-inch, it would list that as well. And if it does that, if you have, or like a 3/4 inch, it would list that because it has a 4 in it. If it does that and you needed just 4-inch, you could add an equals. So do like equals 4. And then, like say, we still got 291, but it would give you only information that matched exactly. But like right here, 291 features, we could hit locate all, and it's going to zoom out, and everything that is a 4-inch is highlighted kind of a thick yellow line. And another option that we have, if you were running reports or anything, would be with those options that we just pulled up, like, 291 features, which is all 4-inch, we can hit print list to a text file. Do you want statistics? Yes, I do. And pulled it up on the other screen. Let's drag this over. And then here it's just saying, hey, we're going to open a text file. Let's open it. And it opened it on the other screen again. So let's pull this over. And it pulls up all of that information for all of those 291 features, and it kind of clumps it all together. However, all the way at the bottom lets us know that there's 4.6 miles of 4-inch, or 24,299 feet. And that can be run for any of the layers. And like water, sewer, I know a lot of highway and street departments will run that for surface type. So they can run, if they have a surface type layer saying whether it's, chip and seal, or it's paved, or it's gravel, they will show those to, to get their, distances for their surface type. And one other one real quick, and then I think we got a couple questions, or I'll close this, is, as I said, any of these layers are searchable. And you can just hit, search, locate, print list, and you can, like I hit to text file and calculate statistics to get those lengths. You can also, if you do a lookup on, a group of parcels, you could send that to an Excel spreadsheet if needed. And for doing that, here, I'm going to turn off this category really quickly. Let's see, turn off. We got kind of back to our normal map, and it still has those highlighted. So I'm going to hit clear. Some other kind of lookups that you can do are for the index are not actually in the index, but just above in lookup. So if I do lookup, and a majority of the things here, the options here, are going to be the same as the tools across the top. So like, locate points for coordinates you enter is right here. Locate, coordinates for point you pick right here. But what we want for kind of some special lookups would be all the way at the bottom. And we've got list features within an area, and we have kind of a few different options. Draw radius. That's used 911 situations. Maybe if there's a wreck with a chemical spill, they may need to say, I need all of the addresses. And so what layer do you want to search? We want addresses. I'll just click a point on the highway. As we move the cursor out, we can see down here how far we are from that point that I clicked. So if we said, 1,000 feet, I want to know who's 1,000 feet from this circle. There's all the addresses. And I can locate all, and there they are from the kind of the point that I clicked, what was kind of right there. The one that is the most common, though, would be just look up, list features within an area, and draw boundary. This lets you kind of freehand an area to search. So I may choose parcels, hit OK, and I'll just kind of go around a little area here. Then right click to finish. And there's all the parcels within that area that I drew. And it was just basically like 2 blocks here. But I could hit print list, Excel spreadsheet. You want statistics? In this case, I don't need statistics. Hit open. And it's going to open on another screen. I'll pull this over. And there's all of that parcel data for those 18 parcels. But again, anything's searchable. There's a lot of lookups to do. And let me know any time if you're trying to run a report or any specific lookups that you just can't quite figure out how to pull the data out, but it's there. Give us a call and we can help you run those reports. And then Leslie said there's a couple questions.
Yes, first one, early on, you had said that when changing the layer settings, there's that pink layer settings button, layer menu, and that it might look different to other users with 3 Ls. Where would they go to update their buttons or change their buttons for that?
Okay, that is actually setup and workstation settings. And under the menu tab where we went to kind of add buttons and remove buttons, where we talked about that in the first session, up here at the top where it says theme, if we hit the pull down, there are a few different themes. Like if I went to classic, this is the original buttons from 20 plus years ago. And like if I zoom down, there's the 3L button. So it's kind of like the original layer settings buttons from years ago, but they have been kind of updated, over the years. So if I hit the pull down, I think I went convex, but again, total personal preference. Yeah, the buttons still do exactly the same thing. They just may look a little different.
Thank you. And then the other question we have, and I believe you may be touching on this topic with our next hour, all of the changes are only saved on the computer you are using, correct? These are not synced to other users.
They are not. They are not synced to other users. Yeah. And so if there was a case where maybe you have one computer that is set up and it looks and is set up exactly the way you like it. And I'll just use a dispatch again as an example. If you work on one of the dispatch positions and everything looks perfect, and you're like, this is what I want all of the dispatch positions to look like. Yeah, let us know once you get that set up, and you can work with us as well to get that one set up to look just the way you want it. Um, there are a couple files that we can work with you, and basically you can copy those files out to the other maps, and then when you reopen those maps, they would look exactly like this other one. It's basically the couple files that contain the layer settings and the buttons and all that. And then if you want it to look like that and not change, yeah, we can work with you as well to kind of, I guess they kind of lock them down so that they can't be changed after that. Or you could change, on, off, auto, all that, but it can't be saved. So as soon as you close the map and reopened, it would revert back to the way that it was set before. So there are some options, but yeah, just but as far as like syncing them, I wouldn't suggest it.
Alrighty. Again, we've got the floor open if anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask a question. So far, I think we're pretty well caught up in the Q&A field off to the right. So otherwise, I think we're about ready for a break.
Okay, yeah, I think yeah, it's 10:50 now, so I think we're break time. So yeah, I guess we'll break there, and we'll be back at 11 and go on to the next session of going over syncing.
Sounds good. We'll be back.